Etsy releases another new feature that, well, I think could be helpful, but I'm not quite sure that it is ready or that a lot of people are going to be using it. And that is, they have a profit calculator. And well, I think it's a great idea in theory because, well, they want you to know how much you're going to be paying in fees. Really important thing here. There's some things I don't necessarily like about it. It doesn't give you a lot of detail. It just gives you a lump sum. We're going to dig into it, but I'm also going to share with you another tool that actually does a way better job. And well, it shows you a full breakdown of where the fees are coming from and how much money you'll end up making after the sale. So Chris, could you pull up the actual info?
Etsy, finally, Scott, has introduced what they're calling an estimated product calculator. And this article headline calls out exactly what our problem with it is as well. They say, sellers say it's missing key data to actually be useful. So the fact that Etsy is rolling anything out is always nice, right? The more tools they give us, the better it is for us as sellers. And what we're seeing is that Etsy has started to roll out this profit calculator, and it will now show up, Scott, in the pricing section of your listing. So when you put in a price for any new listing that you create, it will pop up and it will automatically calculate Etsy fees, right? So they don't do a great job, and we'll see here in just a minute, of breaking everything out, but it will show you your theoretical potential earnings just at a glance based on the price. So before we dive any deeper into this, is this something that you think is useful in helping people understand what their margins are at the very most basic level?
Yeah, I think this should have been done a long time ago. My only thing is like, why do you have to go into the listing to find it? I would rather it be in a tool set, like go under, whether it's marketing, and then in there you'll have like profit calculator. And then this way here, if you're thinking about rolling out a product or if you're getting ready to launch the product, you can do that ahead of time. But they've basically put it right in where the price is. So as you're already, you've already created the product, you've already, done all of your, your listing and all of that stuff. And now you're at this point. It'd be nice to have that ahead of time, but I get it, right? They're not in the market to help us understand product research. Like that's not their job. That's not their role, but they are giving us a nice little widget that's built in now where it will tell you exactly what it is. So you don't have to go and look at, maybe one of your past orders and see how much did they charge me for this and how much is this, even though it says it's X percent, right? And then you have to figure it all out. So I think that is a good thing. It's a move in the right direction, but I still think it's not as useful as it could be. I think it could be better.
Well, and that's something to me that's actually really interesting, right? Because you may remember, Scott, I, who does not write a ton of code, built a Etsy fee calculator a few years ago so that we could help people calculate their Etsy fees if it included advertising revenue, right? Like it took me an hour, and I am not a code genius. I know just enough to write things that work some of the time. So the fact that this is just rolling out for somebody like Etsy is a little mind-boggling to me. I would like to see it as a standalone tool, but I think the most important place for this, if it gave us everything, would be in the listing creation screen, because then you make sure that you're not pricing something incorrectly, right? So if we come into a new listing, we can see that if we set a price at 100, it, without opening anything up, tells us we're going to make $90.05. Maybe, right? So when we open this up, they give us a breakdown of what this looks like. Now, they have changed this slightly from the past, and they gave us a cost field, which by default is set to 0. And if we hover over that, it says, basically consider things like material, labor, packaging, material, and shipping not covered by the buyer. And make sure to include the cost of your time, even if it's just an estimate. Okay. How do we know any of those things? We have to go to another tab to look at what it costs on Printify to ship, this t-shirt or whatever it is. We have to add all those things together and then come in and add it in here. Now, they do also, Scott, link to what their old version of this tool was. Down at the bottom, you may see a link that says, try this pricing worksheet.
Yeah, I saw that.
Version. That is a Google sheet.
That's terrible.
Right? Which is basically an Excel file, if you guys aren't already aware. It's just one of those things that is not user-friendly at all. And there's no reason not to take what this is doing and just drop it in right here. Give me a field for shipping. Instead of making me hover over this, why don't you just break out those things so that anyone who's looking at this tool has the ability to understand the different things that they need to consider? And I think, quite honestly, I feel a little cheated by this because it is most profit calculators are rosy optimism versions of what you're actually going to make on a product because people don't account for those things. Yeah. And so what they're showing you, unless you open this up, they're saying you're going to make $90 on this, or you're going to make $9 on this. Unless you actually account for all of the things, which we're not going to give you a breakout for. So it's better than nothing. But unless you go figure out all of those individual costs and you remember all of the things that are included instead of just giving us a breakout of those things, it's not really useful for people. It's useful at a very, very high level glance. Here's the potential that I have if shipping is magically free to me, right? Like I can airdrop something over to somebody, or digital products, right? Because you're not going to have really anything other than the Etsy fees associated with this. So if you're selling digital products, great, we're going to make $90.05 on this. If we're selling physical products, we have to add in our costs for this to be accurate. And to do that, we have to tell Etsy all of those individual costs. And they don't really tell us all of the things that we should consider. They just say, put in how much it costs you. And so not super useful, but definitely better than nothing, and a nice at a glance tool.
Yeah, I would think that it would just be more where you can input more, but it is better than nothing. So why don't you pull up the other profit calculator, which I have used a lot, and I think it works so much better. And if an outside tool can make this happen, why can't we make this happen, or Etsy make this happen? I guess that's my big thing there. So can you pull that up, Chris?
So Amanda said, digital sellers have overhead too. Yeah, but not really. Like once you've created that file, you can put it on Google Drive. There's really no overhead cost.
We're talking hard cost. That's associated with. We're not saying like your time to hire a designer, or if that's the case, then you got to add that into your product cost. So here's the Etsy profit calculator built into Everbee. So Chris, just kind of walk through it.
Yeah. So unlike where we just had how much does this cost, and then the estimate, we actually see the different things that as a seller we need to think about, right? And one of the reasons that we love Everbee is they have a lot of these different things built in. And Scott, the right-hand side of this gives us that exact breakdown of every individual cost that we're not already accounting for. So if we look back at the Etsy tool, it just says Etsy fees. It doesn't tell us what those are. It doesn't tell us any of those things. And it also just gives us our net margin that they think it will be. If we take a look at this, what they are doing is they're saying, okay, give us the sales price. Tell us how much it costs you to ship it. Are you going to discount it? If so, how much, right? So sales price, $100 minus the shipping price, $12.95, right? And if we come in and just say $10 just to keep the math easy here, right? $10. Okay, cool. Discount automatically was set to 50% to me, right? So that would be $50 in this case, which leaves us with our potential net profit of $43.75, which we see down here in the right-hand corner. Now, if we want to change the cost of this item because we see in Printify or wherever it is that this costs us $12, then we can come in here and do that. By default, Everbee will set this to 40%, right? And so it'll be 40% of whatever the list price is for the item that you pull up the profit calculator on. It's very easy just to pop over to Printify or whoever you're using for print on demand, type in the product, right? Sweatshirt, and figure out what it would be for you to do that. You can also get the shipping cost there as well, and it will deduct those things. So if we were selling this for $100, we were charging $10 for shipping. We gave a 50% discount. It cost us $5 the item was $5.60, and the shipping cost, which again, we got out of Printify, was $4.50. Here's what our potential margin would be at the end of the day.
Chris, go back up though. I want to run an example. Let's say you're selling a sweatshirt for $40. So go up into the sale price, put $40. We're not going to charge for shipping. So shipping is going to be free. That's the shipping price. Discounts, we're not going to do 50%. We're going to do 20%. So put 20% in there. So that's everything on the front end that the customer kind of sees, right? Cost of the item, let's say, is $12. Yep. $12. That's what the sweatshirt's costing. And then we're going to go shipping cost is going to be $5. Okay. So now right off the bat here, we're like, okay, net profit margin is 35.97%. We are profiting $11.51. Right down to the penny, we know exactly what it is. Now you'd say, okay, well, advertising. So Chris, if you go under the advertising, you can see there's Etsy ads or offsite ads. So you can do either or, right? And so we can select in there, what potentially that would be. Okay. And so you'd have to do offsite ads. You have to put in like, okay, 12%, 15%.
And so the difference is once you're over $10,000,
yep.
It drops to 12%, right?
Yep.
So we're going to assume we've been selling for a little while.
Yep.
We get that 12%. It will automatically update that inside of the net profit calculation.
Exactly.
So even looking at all of these fees, right? This is the things most people need to account for. But if we have material costs for different things that we want to include, we can do that. If we want to account for our labor cost, we can do that. If we want to account for any of the miscellaneous things like people using different payment methods, we can figure out what those are. And this just lets us get as granular as we want to be. It's already included with Everbee when you're looking at Everbee. If you have a subscription, it's already included with it. And it gives us the actual detail that we need as a business owner to know, rather than saying, hey, maybe just type in how much this costs you without giving us any idea of what that breakout is. Because even if you read that super helpful little note from Etsy that says, just include your costs, here's some things you might want to factor in. Maybe you're not thinking about that worst case scenario with offsite ads. And it's something, Scott, that people complain about all the time. Hey, it's impossible to make money when I sell with offsite ads. Well, if we know what we're going to sell a product for, we can account for that. So our worst case here, if we're paying 12% on top of all of the fees, on top of all of those other things, we're still going to make $7 on this. That's something we know. We can pull the cost of the items. We can pull the shipping costs, right? That's going to be an average. And then we say, worst case, we're going to make $7.67 on this. I'm okay with that because 99% of my sales are never going to be touched by offsite ads, which means, right, I don't have to account for ads, and I'm going to make $11.54 on the rare occasion that I do have an offsite ad sale, or I want to account for a little bit of cost per click ad spend. I can come in and do that as well, right? I can just say, what does this cost me? I don't know. Let's just say it cost me $5 to make a sale, right? I'll make $6.51 on that. Cool. I know I can probably get around 100 clicks for that, or whatever your cost per click is. That's going to be more than enough to get me a sale from Etsy ads. I'm still going to make $6.51. I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about margins. And I think that, Scott, is one of the biggest mistakes that we see people making. And they ask, how do you make $10, $20 on a product when people are selling mugs for $12? Well, you don't sell it for $12 unless you can make that based on accounting for all of those costs. But once you do have an understanding of that, then you can set your price where you need to make the margin that you want, and know that that's probably what you're going to make in most cases because you've accounted for the costs using the calculator. Etsy's step here is nice. It gets us 5% of the way there. But if you have something like Everbee, you can be 100% of the way there with just a couple clicks and know before you even go to create the listing, before you decide to even create and list the product, how much potential you have to make profit on each individual thing that you sell.